Hi everyone, I'm Tracy Koga. We're proud to present another fan favorite previously on Hue. Hello everyone, welcome to a very special edition of Hue at Home. We are on location in the beautiful Chapters Indigo, but celebrating an incredible book. We have the author here, Phillippa Cranston Baran. Welcome to Winnipeg. The book is about your brother, Toller. We don't need to say his last name.
No, we don't need to say his last name. It's extraordinary, but it's great to be here, Tracy. Thank you so much. I know Winnipeg was always super important to Toller. There were some very significant milestones that he created here, and Winnipeg has been always supportive, and I'm thrilled to bits to be here.
The book now, Toller Cranston, it says Ice, Paint, Passion. Does that follow his passions in life?
You mean the order?
Or the order, yes.
I think the Toller Cranston part, which comes first, probably would have been enough. But we wanted to touch on the skating, the personality, and of course the painting. He considered himself to be an artist, period, end of discussion, from the time he was very little. So whether he was an artist on his skates or in his studio or in his life or in an interview or in his personality, I think the passion just fits.
Toller would be, well, close, or would be turning 75.
That's horrifying, because that means I'm 77, which is even more scary.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so how you do it and look incredible, that's another story that you will come back and you and I will have a talk about.
Yes,
but,
please.
Why do this book now?
Well, I think in some ways him passing away at the age of 65, it's almost 10 years, was tragic and catastrophic for all of us in Canada and the world. But I'm also very aware that had he lived another 10 or 20 years, I would be dead, and so would a whole contingent of fellow competitors, friends, clients, collectors. There wouldn't be anyone to tell this story, and I always think of the line in the musical Hamilton about who lives, who dies, who tells your story. And I knew right from the very beginning that it was my job to tell the story, really to collect the stories and to share them with people. So I couldn't do that if I were a doddering 92-year-old, but I could do it at this age. And it's been an immense privilege and a great joy every step of the way.
Well, I know probably in this journey it brings back so many memories, but just for our viewers and listeners out there, this isn't a biography per se from you, from Phillippa, rating all of your stories about Toller. This is a collection of so many people that were important. Maybe they were competitors, or maybe they were, you know, not best friends, but people that really knew Toller. How did you narrow that list down to the many that are in this book?
Down to the 150? Yeah. I didn't actually narrow it. What happened, to be honest, was that I knew there had to be a book. I made my living as a writer, mostly for television, so writing wasn't a strange thing for me, but I would never presume to write about the politics of figure skating judging, or the importance of Toller in the world of contemporary art, or about LGBT issues, or about various other things. What I could do is write about him as a little boy and write about my experiences with him and the experience of dismantling his property in Mexico in the Mexico period and so on. But along the way, I thought I will ask people who do have the credentials and the experience and the authority to write about skating and politics and judging and so on. And I also thought, cleverly, I thought that at least if so-and-so or so-and-so were in the book, they would want a copy. Maybe they'd want 2 or 3. So that would be how I would get this book distributed. But along the way, I was fortunate enough to get a wonderful publisher, Sutherland House Books in Toronto, which are nonfiction Canadian publishers, exactly what this book needed. And so the book has incredible reach. But initially it was because I didn't want to presume to write about things that I didn't know squat about, and I did want a vehicle to get the book out. And so I've actually managed to get the best of both worlds. I wrote about what I could. I invited other people to contribute. And for Toller, who was so multifaceted and so mercurial and so flighty and so awkward, nobody could say, this is Toller. There was no such thing. So 150 people saying, this is Toller, made more sense. So it's really like a embroidery, I think.
Yeah.
And I also think because everyone who ever saw him skate or met him or heard about him or saw an interview has a feeling. It really is about how Toller affected other people, and that is why I think he has such an impact and he resonates with Canadians, because they see in themselves either creatures that they are, you know, pushing against authority, pushing limits, working hard, trying to be authentic, trying to stay authentic, trying to be true, or wishing they could find the courage to do those kinds of things. He affected both, and I'm incredibly proud of that and pleased that this book presents him in that way.
Well, he is so lucky to have a sibling like you. Question for me, what was it like being big sister?
I know, it's a question that I'm asked, and honestly, the answer was just incredibly normal. We were the most normal, average Canadian middle-class family. There were expectations, responsibilities, do your chores, make your bed, take out the garbage, and don't even talk to me about a decent report card. That's expected. So we had that as a kind of foundation. But Toller, from a pretty young age, I can't say, you know, he was unusual, but not utterly bizarrely unusual. And a lot of that, quite honestly, was a cultivated personality that he developed as he grew into adulthood. And he was pretty open about that. This is my performance Toller, and this is my Toller. So the reason I think that Canadians have responded to him for decades is because underneath they knew he was really a pretty vulnerable, ordinary, decent, flighty, flamboyant, sometimes Canadian guy who was doing what he loved in the face of unspeakable opposition sometimes, but he just did it.
Was he an introvert or extrovert?
Both. I think both. He was quite shy. The people that knew him well saw that side of him. Some people only saw the public thing, which was very, very flamboyant, but I think he was always watching to see how his flamboyance was being perceived. So I think both.
I think probably if he was still living today, I think he would be a lot more comfortable in his own self. But moving on now, when you're talking about all these people and bringing their stories out, what have you learned about Toller that you didn't know before?
That's such a good question, and I'm really proud to say that I always knew he was immensely talented, and I've always been fiercely proud of his talent. What I didn't know, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to say this, was what a decent human being he was, because sometimes he was selfish. He had to be, I understand that. Sometimes he was irresponsible. He didn't have to be irresponsible, but he often was. But I am completely blown away and humbled by the extraordinary effect he's had on so many other people. People have said, honestly, not a week goes by that I don't hear, Toller made me brave, Toller gave me courage, Toller allowed me to come out, Toller allowed me to be who I am, Toller inspired me. Even people who never met him, never knew him, they sensed that with him. And I didn't have a clue about the power of that and the depth of that impact. And now that the book is out and I'm traveling a bit and meeting more people, I'm so humbled by the outrage people still feel, people in their 70s and 80s like me, about how he was cheated with the judging and he didn't win a medal and he should have. And you know, there's a real feeling of ownership almost in this person. And for me, his legacy for Canada is what's driving me. I just feel that he needs to be remembered and acknowledged as an important Canadian.
Well, most certainly. And if you think about it too, your journey now, having done this book, my question, first, is why Mexico? Why did Mexico have such a hold on Toller?
Well, it had an almost magical hold on Toller from the first time he went. San Miguel de Allende which is a Spanish colonial city, roughly 4 hours north of Mexico City. It's in the mountains. Has always been an artistic center for 400 years. And so a lot of artists have settled there and practiced there. And not only artists, but the artisans. They can make and create anything. The workmen in Mexico are second to none. So metal, glass, weaving, fabric, ceramic, they are just the best of the best. So the artistic center, the history, a historical, cultural aspect attracted him. But also he was outrageously terrible with money, and he could afford to live in a style in Mexico that he could never have afforded, I think, anywhere else in the world. So he had this massive estate property and a staff of 6, and he could live the way he wanted to live. And honestly, San Miguel is a 4 or 5 hour flight from almost everywhere. It suited him perfectly. The light, the color, the flowers, the nature, the craft, the art, the shopping, it all just fit perfectly with him, and he loved being there. But you don't really see, he wasn't painting burrows and cacti. He was painting from his own vision, but his color palette and the light and so on influenced him very strongly. He talks about that, so I'm not kind of making it up. He loved Mexico, and Mexico loved him.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Now, about you though, you became the trust of the estate,
yes.
Trustee. 18,000 pieces?
18,000. They were counted. They
Oh
were
my God.
actually counted. 18,000 things on his property that were identified, not cataloged, but numbered, listed, priced, excluding the paintings. Those were all handled separately.
Right.
18,000 things were dispersed in 45 days. It was unbelievable. It was a 6-week estate sale that went on every day, 7 days a week, and it was utterly magical. There was so much stuff, just so much stuff, and there are lots of photos in the book, that prices were so cheap. There was no arguing, there was no bickering, there was no nothing. People would just come, they'd pour their hearts out, they'd tell their stories, and they'd buy something, and then they would come back, and they'd buy more, and they'd come back, and they'd come back. It was like the drug addiction in San Miguel in September 2015. But somebody said, this is like organ transplants, and it was. So Toller's place was just being dismantled, but things were being just floated out to properties all over San Miguel. Things were brought to Canada, brought to every part of the US, and I feel like there's little pieces of Toller everywhere. And you go to somebody's house and they'll say, I got that at Toller's sale, or you got that at Toller Cranston's sale. I got one too. And it's kind of lovely.
Oh my goodness. Well, it must be so important to you to see the love, right?
Yes.
That everybody
Astounding.
has for Toller.
I know,
and that
even
peace.
people that he'd hurt and insulted and disappointed, they'd say, your brother, I had a party in his honor and he didn't show up. And they'd be smiling ear to ear, and I think, oh my goodness, that's so terribly rude. But there was a huge affection for him and a respect for him that I can't entirely understand, but I know that it's real, and I know that it was there.
Oh my goodness. How have you been through all of this?
Tough as nails, I think. No, constantly inspired by the people and inspired by the journey with the book. There are 150 separate contributors. There are 32, I think, photographers who gave me the rights to use their pictures. Many of them have never been seen before. Not one single person asked for money, asked to be paid. The proceeds from the book are going to support Toller Cranston Legacy Initiative, so that wasn't an issue. But people would say, oh, I'm so honored, I'd be honored to contribute, thank you so much, I'm so pleased, I'm so proud to be included. And it's been just a joy and a privilege and a pleasure.
Yes, okay. The Toller Cranston Foundation.
Yes.
What is its mission statement? What do you want to do?
What I want to do in Toller's name is support young talent. It doesn't have to be in figure skating or in painting, in absolutely anything. Accessing undiscovered talent is what it's all about. Promoting the values of courage, creativity, and expression, which is what he stood for, and celebrating diversity and inclusion and being authentic. So those are the kinds of things. There's already Toller Cranston Scholarship set up with the Canadian Olympic Foundation. I'm supporting, this is a wonderful endeavor in San Miguel. It's an it's boxing and fighting. Mexicans, they're bringing Mexican kids off the street and training them physical discipline, practice, perfection, technique, just like what Toller did, except it's with boxing. They've been doing this for 5 years, and it's astounding. I was there a couple months ago. They had 120 kids in a park at 9 o'clock at night, boxing and punching bags and working out and skipping rope. And just the discipline, the work, the respect, the self-respect, and the capacity to struggle and challenge is what they stand for. Plus the Children's Art Foundation and their other initiatives as we go along. So part of what I want to do is funnel money to these organizations that will celebrate their talents in Toller's name. But I also want to work to keep his name alive. So I'm shooting now to have an exhibition of his work at the 2026 Olympics in Milan. And I've got a new book coming out in the fall, which will be just on his artwork. I mean, that's the other thing, that Toller Cranston artist is how I want him to be remembered. So we have a publisher for the new book. It will be amazing, and I'm excited about that too.
So is he like telegraphing all of these ideas? I'm sure he is. You know, he's saying, "Come on, Phillippa, I need this book out. Come on, Phillippa, we're going to do this foundation."
No, I don't know if he is, but I've just known from the beginning that it had fallen to me to do it. And I accepted the challenge, and I am incredibly grateful for the support and the enthusiasm that's gathered around this journey. And so, yeah, maybe he's behind it. I don't know.
Oh.
I'd have to think he'd be pleased, though.
Oh gosh, I'm sure he's smiling ear to ear,
Yeah, I
doing
hope so.
his double sockos
Yeah.
and wonderful things. On his tombstone,
Yes.
Zero Tolerance.
Yes. That was the title of one of his books.
Mm-hmm.
So he wrote, or Ghost wrote, a number of books, but one was called Zero Tolerance with 2 L's, and it fits. He had zero tolerance for mediocrity, zero tolerance for any kind of half-assed effort, zero tolerance for doing less than your best, and that's to me what he stood for. So it just says Toller, artist, zero tolerance. It doesn't say Cranston. It doesn't say any of that stuff because it wasn't necessary.
No.
So I will tell you that part of his ashes are buried in Mexico. The other half is back in Canada where it belongs.
No, so fitting. Well, you are doing some more book touring. This is an incredible book, Toller Cranston, Ice Passion. Thank you so much, Phillippa, for being here. And I just want to say there is a little bit of a Winnipeg connection in the book. The wonderful Brentley Carrington, is she not, have her own little piece in the book too as well.
She is. Brentley was one of Toller's oldest and dearest friends, and there weren't many that could get close to Toller and even more stay close to Toller. He had fallings out with many people over the years, but Brentley and her husband Brent have been amazing, absolute stalwart friends for Toller. He was extremely lucky to have them, and I would say by extension Winnipeg, in his corner for his entire life.
Oh, well, that just is a good testament to us Winnipeggers. Yeah. No. Again, thank you so much. Thank you to Chapters Indigo for hosting us here. And you got a book signing to get to.
I do.
So wonderful to meet you,
I hope
Phillippa.
people will come and join us today.
Thank you. And
Thank
I know
you, Tracy.
that this might be like the gold medal that Toller.
You know what? That's the
always
nicest
wanted.
thing he would be. And that was something Brentley asked me the other day, did he have any regrets or any resentments? And he certainly carried a lot of grudge, I would say, that he was never able to win a gold medal, Olympics or Worlds. But I think you're exactly right. I think this is the gold medal. The fact that he's being so celebrated 10 years almost after he passed away and 50 years after he was a competitive figure skater is pretty amazing.
Yes, he's always in our hearts and in our minds. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy.
And thank you all for joining us here on Hue at Home. We'll see you next time.